Good to have you with us. Ed Schultz, Susan Commentary. Just to give you the temperature of the country, at least from my perspective. So the last 2 days I've been at the White House. I've gone to the White House press briefings. They're a little bit after 1 o'clock. It's a packed house. The room's not very big to start with. But I've gotten credentials to get in the first couple of briefings this week because I'm curious about what's going on, and I think I'm going to keep doing this when I'm in town. So I take a selfie, just having fun, of the White House in the background as I'm walking into the press office, and I put it on Facebook, and I am blasted with nasty negative comments from people around the country. I'm a turncoat. How could I dare go? I mean, just the nastiest shit you'll ever read in your life. For what? I'm going to see what's going on in the news. I tell you what, liberals are on edge like never before. And I just want to, as a reporter, profoundly point out that all Donald Trump is doing these first 3 days in office, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, is exactly what he said he was going to do. Some of the things which Bernie Sanders would have done had he been president. The first day was trade. Goodbye, TPP. Let's talk jobs with the union boys. The second day, oil pipelines. Okay, Keystone XL back in action, Dakota Access Pipeline. Today, it's immigration and border security, and we're going to build the wall. That's what the president says. Now, am I advocating those things? No, but I am reporting to you that's what's going on. And I can also report to you that the sense that I get from the White House, that there is this level of determination that this is what they're going to do. These are the priorities. They're not wasting any time. And the president doesn't care if the media likes him or not. You can't be an outsider. You can't run as an outsider. You can't be an anti-Washington and get along with the mainstream media. It doesn't fit. The mainstream media is Washington. The mainstream media covers what's in Washington. And quite often they pick and choose what they think is important, which may be totally different from the lawmakers or totally different from the president. In this case, yesterday's a perfect example. Voter fraud. The president made some kind of statement about he thought 3 million people voted illegally. The media's all over it. It wasn't the focus of the White House that day, but that's the story that was covered. And then he was challenged, the press secretary, in the briefing about, well, why isn't there investigation? So Trump gets his back up and says, okay, to hell with you. We're going to have an investigation. And it's a reactionary administration. But he's also reacting to the very people that voted for him. I don't watch all of the cable shows, but I did flip around last night. Lo and behold, there's Chris Matthews on MSNBC, my old friend. He's got 2 union heads on there. Terry O'Sullivan was one of them. I didn't know the other guy. He's got these union guys eating out of his hand, saying all kinds of wonderful things about Trump. And I'm sitting at home and I say to Wendy, I said, you know what's happening here? Donald Trump is taking a very important voter base away from the Democrats. All those union guys care about is jobs. They don't care about what bathroom you're going to use. They don't care, about some of the other issues that the Democrats were just big on in this election cycle. They care about jobs. Some of these union guys were saying that they'd never been to the White House before, which I found very interesting. That they've never been invited to the White House, that they've never even knew where the Oval Office was, and that they were just enamored that this was happening. So Trump, who, if you do the journalism, will find out that he has a horrible record working with unions. But he brings in these union leaders, has these guys eaten out of his hands, says we're going to create jobs, we're going to do great things. You guys are here. Look what we did with TPP. We saved jobs. We're going to do infrastructure. And the Democrats are over there watching these union guys and watching all of these things happen by executive order, trying to say, you know what? This guy's for real, and we got to figure out how we're going to counter this. So the Democrats yesterday come out with $1 trillion infrastructure plan and challenge the president, come work with us on this, because the Republicans would never do it. So as far as a reporter is concerned, there's so much political activity going on in this town right now. It's really unbelievable, because for months there was nothing. For months there wasn't anything going on. So today, there are two new executive orders. One of the orders that the president signed says a large physical barrier will be put on the southern border. The other order deals with immigration enforcement that ends catch and release. Federal agents are going to unapologetically enforce the law. No ifs and or buts, according to Sean Spicer. The president does his first sit-down interview with David Muir of ABC. It's going to play tonight at 10 o'clock in prime time. He says that Mexico's going to pay for the border.
Are you going to direct U.S. funds to pay for this wall? Will American taxpayers pay for the wall?
Ultimately, it'll come out of what's happening with Mexico. We're going to be starting those negotiations relatively soon, and we will be in a form reimbursed by Mexico, which I've always said.
So they'll pay us back?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yes.
So the American taxpayer will pay for the wall at first?
All it is we'll be reimbursed at a later date from whatever transaction we make from Mexico.
Mexico's president said in recent days that Mexico absolutely will not pay, adding that it goes against our dignity as a country and our dignity as Mexicans. He says, quite simply, they're not paying.
David, I think he has to say that. He has to say that. But I'm just telling you, there will be a payment. It will be in a form, perhaps a complicated form. And you have to understand, what I'm doing is good for the United States. It's also going to be good for Mexico. We want to have a very stable, very solid Mexico.
When does construction begin?
As soon as we can. As soon as we can physically do it. We're
within months?
I would say in months, yeah. I would say in months. Certainly planning is starting immediately.
Now, this isn't the first time this week that the president has talked about Mexico. If you look at trade, he got rid of the TPP, and he's also talking about renegotiating NAFTA. The United States has a trade deficit with Mexico to the tune of $50+ billion a year. The number one product that comes out of Mexico to the United States is automobiles. Guess who was at the White House yesterday? All of the CEOs from the car makers. And what do you think Trump is telling them? Boys, we're going to flatten this table here a little bit. You're going to help me out. Now, whether you like Trump or hate him or whatever, I'm just giving you the news of what this guy's doing. I want more insight from my good friend John Nichols, Washington correspondent and of The Nation magazine. John, good to have you with us.
Ed, it's good to be with you.
What do you make of the first 3 days? What's happening here?
Well, I think we knew we were strapping in for a roller coaster ride, didn't we?
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, Trump's campaign told us how he would govern. And remember, nobody ever governs differently than the campaign. It's one of the great errors that people make is the lie they tell themselves during a campaign. They say, well, yeah, maybe he's a little wild now. Maybe he's doing some kind of kooky things now, but once he gets in office, he'll be okay. You know, he'll be different, or she'll be different. Doesn't work like that. No, you campaign in a certain way because a campaign is essentially a huge endeavor, and the candidate is the CEO or is the president of the campaign. And once you take office, you know, it's going to operate a lot like that, and Trump is. So what we're seeing from Trump is something that extends from him. He is moving fast. I kind of differ with one of the things that you said in your very good intro, and that is where you said, you know, he doesn't really care about what the press says. I think he's obsessive about it. I think he cares a lot about what the press says, but that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to bend to the press, right? So he's very, as you did also say, very reactive, very, you know, kind of fast-moving. And it's fascinating because, you know, one of the things that's happened in politics over the last 20 years, basically since Nixon, political consultants and political aides have said, no matter what they throw at you, don't acknowledge it, right? Just let it slide off you. Pretend it didn't happen. But Trump doesn't do that. And so this is restructuring everything. He says something in a conversation with some Democratic members of Congress about voter fraud, which doesn't exist. He's living in a fantasy world on this. It comes out. His press secretary even kind of dances around it. And then the next morning, Trump says, no, we're going to investigate this. I'm going for it. Now, you can, you know, love the guy or hate the guy. You can agree with the guy or disagree with him. That's different. Everything that happened in that little simple scenario there is a break from how any other president has operated.
Yeah.
And so everybody's got to sort of readjust. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but you got to acknowledge that we're on a different ride at the theme park.
Here is what is also happening. You say that he's a man of action, and he is doing a lot of things. Trump is going to block visas to anyone from Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Iran, Sudan, and of course the United States is currently having bombing campaigns in 5 of those countries. Here's the other thing. The immigration actions also seek to withdraw visas from countries to make sure that they take back people in the United States illegally who are found to have broken U.S. laws. It would also strip federal grants from sanctuary cities and states that do not enforce federal immigration laws. So he is, in a sense, going head-to-head with sanctuary cities. He also said this over the Department of Homeland Security.
We do not need new laws. We will work within the existing system and framework. We are going to restore the rule of law in the United States.
What's different here, John?
Well, there's not much different from what Trump said during the campaign. I mean, obviously he's not doing all the things that he said during the campaign, but this extends from a lot of statements he made, a lot of what he ran on. Frankly, I think his approach is terrible. I think it's an irresponsible approach. We need to address a whole host of refugee and immigration issues. These are complex issues, and presidents have wrestled with them in the past. What Donald Trump is doing is sort of jumping at a few spots, but not giving us anything that's comprehensive. Mm-hmm. I think he is a man of action. There's no doubt of that. And many of his supporters will be very pleased. They will see someone who ran for office giving them what he said he would give them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we need to understand that people who flee Sudan or Syria or other places, overwhelmingly, those are people who desperately want to get out of a horrible situation.
Yeah.
And they come as economic refugees, they come as political refugees. And also, Ed, I would point out, many of them come as religious refugees, i.e., they are members of minority religions, Christian faith, and others.
This is a broad brush, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't like the broad brush. I think I expect more of presidents.
Yeah, no doubt. Then he picks on Chicago. He says, and tweets out last night, that if Chicago doesn't fix what's going on, quote, I will send in the feds. Here's the reaction from Sean Spicer today talking about that.
I mean, he met with Mayor Emanuel during the transition, expressed to him his support for the city, the need to deal with the crime and the killings that are occurring in Chicago. You know, I think when President Obama was speaking his farewell address the other day, 2 people were killed the same day that the president was in his home city. And I think the president-elect at the time extended his support to Mayor Emanuel to say that the resources of the federal government are here for you. To the best of my knowledge, that return call for help has not occurred.
Trump has previously encouraged Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel to ask for federal assistance. Emanuel has not addressed Trump's tweet or spoken about the violence as it relates to possible federal intervention. But he did say in the past, in an interview with the Chicago television station, that they have not gotten the federal help they used to get, and that he needs more money for police officers, he needs more money for gun tracking, and also the enforcement of gun laws. So this is, if you want to do something about Chicago murders, I guess you got to go to the mayor. But Donald Trump is ready to inject himself into this issue. John, your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the mayor ought to give him a call and say, I'll take the money. Give me a whole bunch of money. Because, frankly, our cities do need federal resources. They don't just need it for, criminal justice issues. They need it for a host of issues. But, look, I cover urban areas, and I'm looking at schools and other, public systems that need resources. So if Donald Trump is offering, take the money. By the same token, this is when Trump talks about law and order and criminal justice. Again, I'm going to be pretty critical here. I think he does the broad brush. And I definitely think that Chicago faces some tremendous challenges, and I don't fault to point some of those out. That's certainly the prerogative of a president, a prerogative of any political figure. But I hope that this doesn't become some sort of combat where Donald Trump is trying to micromanage how Chicago deals with some of these issues. I think he can prod. I think he can encourage. I think he can criticize. If he's offering resources, I think, look, get those resources to people that need them.
Yeah.
But I am uncomfortable. Remember, I'm old enough, Ed. You're almost old enough to remember when Richard Nixon and others used law and order not as a tool to unite, but as a tool to divide.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to be kind of careful with this talk.
Excellent point. John Nichols, always a pleasure. Good to visit, my friend. Thanks so much.
Honored to be with you, my friend.
Washington correspondent to The Nation magazine, John Nichols. More comments after this. Stay with us.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Was there voter fraud? Well, there's one person who thinks there was, and that happens to be the President of the United States. Now, that's reporting. There's no evidence out there. There is going to be an investigation now because the media jumped all over Sean Spicer yesterday in the press briefing. And now this morning, Congressman Elijah Cummings says, what?
Our oversight committee today is sending out 50 letters to 50 attorney generals all over the country who basically said that there is no real voter fraud. The thing that I worry about with this argument about voter fraud is it gives the Republicans and others another tool and another reason to justify to the public of denying people the right to vote. And there are people who have not had the right to vote. We've got people standing in lines 5 hours after the voting booth closes. That is not American. And again, the president can join me and my staff, and we will show him that there is no voter fraud. The thing I do want him to do, I want him to investigate, are all the people who don't get the chance to vote, who are being denied the right to vote. And I would give him some more advice, and that is when he talks to Paul Ryan, to ask Ryan to bring up the Voting Rights Act so that we can strengthen it after it has been basically gutted by the Supreme Court.
So the bottom line here is the president may have walked right into a rat's nest because this is a domino effect. To do an investigation on voter fraud and to do a very comprehensive and encompassing investigation, it's going to go off into a lot of different areas. The big thing here is going to be to see if he pays attention to what the Democrats are saying about it and even asks them if they have any concerns anywhere or how this investigation should be conducted. Ed Schultz, News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.